Okay. Will we give it like a few minutes to get started?
Yep, so we're live and just gonna wait, give it another minute or two here. Just gonna go on mute for a minute.
I'll go on mute too.
All right, guys, we'll start in about 30 seconds here. All right, let's get started. So thank you all for attending our webinar today. My name is Ryan. I'm with GrowDefender. We're going to be discussing how to prevent microbial contamination for the entire grow cycle. So we're excited to talk through that with you guys. I myself am the co-founder. A little background on me. I have spent some time in the medical device industry with a startup that grew over a course of about 10 years into a $25 million company or so. That's kind of where I got familiar with regulated industry. And from there went into cannabis with a cannabis startup company that ultimately went down the DEA path, getting some DEA registrations and growing federally legal cannabis. And then left there around 2021 and started in the branding and marketing industry, which ultimately led me to co-founding GrowDefender with Dustin, who is also on the call today.
Hi, guys.
And with us as well is Tara Morgan. She is a head field analyst and microbiologist from Pure Vita Labs. Tara, would you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Morgan. I've been working with the cannabis testing industry for over 7 years now. I'm, like Ryan said, I'm the field analyst manager at Pure Vita Labs. In this role, I oversee everything from cannabis sample collection in the field to environmental monitoring and assist in the microbiology testing. We run a few programs with some of our clients for facility health monitoring, where we monitor the facility in hopes to help them, improve their products. Over the years, I've walked through more than 50 different cultivation sites, ranging from, cutting edge tech facilities to basic grows. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Tara. So what we'll be going through today, just a couple discussion points here. We'll talk about microbials and their impact on the industry, some of the hidden costs related to microbial contamination, some of those limits that come with commonly used cleaning and sanitization products. And then we'll end with how GrowDefender Antimicrobial ultimately works to help prevent microbial contamination in these facilities. And then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So jumping right into microbials' impact. So what's really at stake here is, ultimately failed microbial testing, and that leads to some form of remediation, which requires retests. And if that fails so many times, some states you have to ultimately destroy the product, which can become a major financial burden. Repeated failures, just like other regulated industries, are kind of viewed to have systemic operational problems and could lead to them watching you a little closer, requiring additional testing, et cetera. But it can also lead to fines, suspension, or even revocation of your licenses. And recalls. So, products can get through and pass microbial testing, but they still actually have a problem. There are errors. Sampling isn't perfect. If this product gets on the market and there's consumers that ultimately receive some issues from them, it can lead to recalls, et cetera. And then that can cause a whole new set of issues. But really the key takeaway here that we're trying to drive is that everyone fails from time to time. And that's going to cost you some sort of revenue, whether it's the cost of remediation and the retesting, and hopefully not destruction. But the goal is, or what we're trying to ultimately prevent is repeated failures, because repeated failures can lead to ultimately running your business kind of into the ground and causing more and more issues there. Microbial issues, it's not uncommon for this to make the headlines. There's companies who are getting six-figure fines. They're recalling millions of dollars of product. Labs are getting shut down because they're not reporting accurately. And what this is doing is it's really kind of putting a lot of stress on the cultivator and these facility operators, because they're trying to think like what all they can do to prevent this from ever happening to them. So there's a crowd of people. Some people believe that microbials in cannabis is no big deal, and that they're supposed to be there and there's really no major problems from them. But the reality is the regulatory agencies, there's things in place that require you to meet certain thresholds, and as an operator, it's in your best interest to meet those, whether or not you believe that microbials are a major problem or not. So we're kind of focusing on how can we help operators meet these regulatory requirements, and not really thinking through the whole idea of whether or not microbials are actually bad for you, because whether or not they are, you still have to meet the regulatory requirements. Tara, could you maybe share from your experience some of the gaps that you've seen in some of the grows of maybe where they're not thinking to look for microbials and that kind of stuff?
Sure. Wow, so many areas that everyone tends to overlook. First, I guess it'd start with your AC systems. Proper cleaning of them. They're a huge source of hidden contamination. If you're not cleaning them every single, grow cycle, things will build up in the AC units and then spray all over your plants into the atmosphere and then easily spread that way. You have your runoff trays that, if you're using trays to place your plants on, that's another hidden one where, the water's running over the trays and they are not being cleaned properly. Another thing would be even just your outside air coming into your grow, not having proper filtration systems and keeping that outside air, because just regular air outside has, a significant amount of yeast and mold just present in the air. Another system that's definitely overlooked is the whole complete water system. Biofilms will, fill the lines, and then the yeast and mold can grow off that. And then what happens is that then you end up you think you're just feeding it nutrients, but you're also feeding it yeast and mold. And then that will end up in your soil and then ultimately in the air around your grow. I guess a couple other things that people don't think about was packaging, things that people are bringing in. There's a lot of like penicillium can live just on cardboard. So all your packaging that's coming into your facility, the spores are there. And if that's not, kept in a contamination area where you can clean it properly and unpack everything, that can also contribute. And then also just your soil, where you're getting your soil from, or your cocos, whatever substrate that you're using can, have a significant impact on your mold counts. And I would say those are pretty much the main things, that some people aren't looking at.
Yeah. And what's kind of, I'm just curious, you're based in Rhode Island. What's like the range that you see in Rhode Island of microbial contamination, maybe from a CFU standpoint,
Um,
actually on the flower itself?
on the flower, anywhere from 0 to over 100,000 CFUs on the
Interesting.
product.
Yeah, we were on a call with a lab in Florida last week, and he was mentioning to us that he has a client that has, I think the piece of equipment he uses goes to 4.9 million. It can register CFUs, and he was registering that number on one of the clients, and that was very eye-opening. And Florida being a humid state, kind of can see that being the proper breeding ground. So, and your state is it a 10,000 CFU threshold?
10,000.
Okay. And that varies from between, is that very, I think it's between maybe 1,000 and 100,000 for most states.
Correct. I think that, yeah, I know states that are 100,000 as the
Yeah,
limit. I don't know anyone who's over that, but I could.
yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let's jump into some of the hidden costs. So, we all know the direct impact costs of microbial contamination. It's it can be remediation, additional staffing and labor to do work-throughs and retests, potential recalls. Those are kind of those hard line costs related to microbial contamination. But similar to like an iceberg, there's some hidden costs that come with this type of problem. Supply disruptions, not just for the actual grower, but also for dispensaries. So, there was an article not long ago where a recall resulted in a dispensary losing 80% of their product. So ultimately, the consumer, the patient, is losing out on being able to get the product that they need. I think one of the biggest ones is brand reputation. As in any regulated industry, when you're kind of dinged by the regulatory agency, it puts a target on your back, and it makes it difficult to recover. And that opportunity loss of future growth that you could have had if you would have never, kind of got that target on your back is substantial. Also being under that closer lens of regulatory scrutiny. And then another big one is worker health. So there's a lot of stories about workers being impacted by microbials, and unfortunately some resulting in death. So there is a direct impact to workers in these facilities when microbial contamination is bad. Those are the types of things that.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add there, Ryan, was, and Tara and I were talking about it briefly earlier, was what's the range of sick, right? Like death is the utmost worst, obviously, but where's that middle ground, right? If somebody just has, getting headaches all the time, or their nose is stuffy, it's still affecting their health. It might not be as drastic as one end of the spectrum, but I think there is a conversation to be said. You look at things like alcohol that might be 40,000 deaths a year, which is atrocious, but it's still affecting the overall health and well-being. Someone just might feel nauseous or uneasy, but there are minor symptoms that you might not even know. Similar if your house has mold in it somewhere and you don't notice it until there's these slow long-term effects. So I think there's a conversation there to be had that's not for this webinar, but I think it's just to be noted that there's levels of what sick could look like from contamination.
Yeah, great point. So let's jump into limitations of disinfectants. So most facilities, if not all facilities, are using some sort of disinfectant, and they're using it at room changeover when they're doing a deep clean of these, flowering rooms, for example, before they bring in the next batch of product. There are some limitations with these types of products. So any sanitizer or disinfectant is really only working at that time of application. As soon as it's applied and evaporates, that surface is immediately vulnerable for microbials that are falling from the air, coming into the room from employees. Like Tara said, if you're bringing in packaging or any other materials or products from outside of your facility, that's kind of reintroducing them into the room after it was just sanitized. And the reality is you sanitize, 10 seconds later it's not really sanitized anymore. And that creates this false sense of security. People think when they're doing a deep clean and they're cleaning all the surfaces with disinfectant, cleaning all their tools, walls, floors, benches, everything in the room, that as soon as they're done, it's easy to think, okay, we're clean, we're perfect. But the reality is, it's immediately vulnerable for additional contamination. And this graph just shows, day zero being, for example, a 60-day-ish grow cycle. They're doing that deep clean at the beginning. Total yeast and mold count is hopefully 0 after a deep cleaning. But as that grow cycle goes, starting with day 1, that total yeast and mold count is increasing significantly on the surfaces in that room. So it's kind of a unique bell curve there showing that.
Hey, Ryan, if I could jump in real quick. I did have a cultivator. I was doing a facility health monitoring program for them, and they cleaned an entire room with a certain product. And I went in afterwards and I did some testing. We swabbed everything in the room, the ACs, the trays and everything, and it wasn't clean. It was a significant amount of mold and yeast still there. So some of the products that they do say work aren't particularly working.
Yeah. And did you say that was right after they did their room cleaning?
Right after they did their room cleaning.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was wrong. Not all disinfectants work, but maybe that's related to going more the organic, more the safer ingredient based stuff. I'm not entirely sure, but some of the work we've done with Tara, this is kind of what the results of surface swabbing looks like. It's minimal to no at the beginning of the growth cycle, but by day 60, there's significant CFUs of mold on surfaces in the room. And these are rooms that were cleaned with leading disinfecting products that hundreds of grows are using. So this is being experienced by many different grows. And so what's the result of this? It ultimately results in these facilities constantly cleaning, because when the product you're using is a one-time kill and leaves everything vulnerable within seconds after it's used, how do you combat that? Well, you just keep cleaning, and you're constantly cleaning, which requires additional labor, time, materials, and ultimately it can result in downtime. So some of these cleanings products have long reentry interval times, and when you're doing it more often, it's just creating more downtime, and it creates this cycle of sanitize, disinfect, the microbes rebound, sanitize, disinfect, and it's just constant. People who are using disinfectants that are keeping total yeast and mold under control are probably doing a ton of this. When the employees have downtime, they're constantly wiping things down with IPA. and just trying to stay ahead of it. But going back to the core problem or key takeaway of these one-time kill disinfectant product is that they're creating this false sense of security. When somebody does a really good job cleaning, and I think we could probably relate to this at our homes. When we do a really good job cleaning our kitchen, we're like, wow, it's clean. We feel really good about it for at least a week. And then, it needs done again. It's, with these grow facilities being the perfect environment for microbials, recontamination is happening extremely fast. So how can GrowDefender help with this type of issue? So I want to talk a little bit about what it actually is first. So it is a patented EPA regulated, and it's 99% water, but it's a quaternary ammonium compound that residually kills, and it's effective against 120 plus microbes. So this is a solution that is as a part of a typical cleaning and sanitization procedure. It can be used to replace how they're using a disinfectant. And the way it works is it's actually creating a bond to the surfaces that it's applied to, and it can last for 90 days. And during that 90 days, it's not chemically killing microbes, it's mechanically killing them because there are no harsh chemicals. So it's 99% water. So this isn't a chemical kill, it's a mechanical kill. So it's bonding to the surface, and this is being applied to floors, walls, ceilings, benches, carts, tools, just about all the surfaces in a facility. And this is not going on the plant. This product is not approved to be applied to the plant. Just all the surfaces, HVAC filters, it really just supercharges them if you're applying them to your HEPA filters. And then also the water systems, like Tara mentioned earlier in the call, applying it to the insides of the tanks, running it through the lines. It's creating that bond in the surfaces of those lines and inside the tank, which will ultimately prevent biofilm. And then it keeps the water cleaner, resulting in, not feeding your plants mold in the water. And it's applied using an atomizer. So you can buy, an atomizer, fogger type piece of equipment at Home Depot. We have certain ones that we recommend. We try to be in the 30 to 50 micron droplet size. That's what works best for GrowDefender. So how does it compare to leading disinfectants? So I showed this graph a couple slides before. So you see that bell curve with disinfectants. And with GrowDefender, after 60 days, very little microbial growth on surfaces. So it's protecting continuously the surfaces that it's applied to for that entire grow cycle. And it's just something that disinfectants can't do. And it's another approach to ultimately controlling microbials in the facility, rather than just relying on a disinfectant or sanitizing process. An antimicrobial product like GrowDefender is applied and just keeps killing, not a one-time kill. So just kind of another way to illustrate this, at room changeover, room is disinfected and clean, and that grow cycle starts. A lot of facilities aren't doing much disinfecting during that grow cycle on the surfaces in the room. So that entire grow cycle is a period of active contamination. That's when we're seeing those the total yeast and mold count reaching hundreds of thousands of CFU on surfaces. And the primary difference is it's really the complete opposite. GrowDefender is actively killing during that entire grow cycle. So it's not recontaminating, it's actively killing the entire cycle. And we really like, and this will kind of go into the next slide, but on how GrowDefender can actually prevent this microbial contamination for the entire growth cycle is looking at it holistically from a full facility standpoint. So when we're working with a new grower, typically we get the layout of the facility and we kind of outline how they should use the product. So some areas we recommend treating every grow cycle. Other areas we're recommending every 90 days because it's effective for up to 90 days. So here's an example of what would be treated every grow cycle. So looking at the higher risk rooms in the facility, flowering rooms specifically, you're treating all the surfaces in the room every grow cycle, and your trimming room as well, drying room as you're moving product in and out, and your other plant rooms, water tanks specifically going to flowering rooms. So when you change over, for example, in this diagram, flowering room 1, whatever tanks are supplying that room, we recommend treating, and so forth. And then all the HVAC filters and units in those rooms, all the tools and equipment, all good to treat every grow cycle. And then we look at it from an every 90 days, because this is ultimately a product that you have to use less of because it is effective for so long. So from an every 90-day standpoint, it's really the common areas in the facility, your hallways, your gowning room, your water room, things like that maybe are not product contact rooms, or product storage rooms or grow rooms. So to really prevent microbials in the facility, you have to treat the entire facility. Just having a cleaning and sanitization protocol for your product contact rooms is not good enough, because HVAC units are pushing air throughout the whole facility. So it's important that every room in the facility is treated. And we kind of recommend it based off of a grow cycle or every 90 days. So what's the result of using a product like GrowDefender? So it's significantly less mold and microbials in your facility. These are some numbers that we've calculated from the studies that we've done. So significant reduction. This is after 60 days. So the product was used, 60 days later, it was tested, surfaces were swabbed, and compared to control rooms where common disinfectants were used. So at the time of harvest, these swabs were taken, and when you compare the room that used GrowDefender compared to just a standard disinfectant, it was significant reduction. So that shows that the product is effective at preventing microbial growth, and it's significant compared to a standard disinfectant. And the outcome of this is a much lower risk of total yeast and mold count failed testing, a lower risk of accidental contaminated product entering the market, which is millions of dollars in recalls, less cleaning and sanitizing. The product is effective for 90 days. So, the idea of having employees walking around wiping everything down with IPA every minute of downtime isn't an issue when you're using this type of product. And ultimately, it's a healthier grow environment for plants and employees. And in any business in general, when you lower risk, it allows for an increased profit. And Tara, I know you've had some experience with the product with GrowDefender. Would you mind sharing how you came across GrowDefender and some of the work that you've done with it?
Sure. So actually, there was a little drop off. There was a little product of your GrowDefender at our lab, and it was dropped off and was sitting there one day. And so my journey actually began at home. I have a standard AC unit that I, meticulously clean every year. I take it out of the window and take it all apart and clean it. But to my dismay, it was always full of mold, like black mold by the end of the season. So out of curiosity, the bottle was sitting there, and I was like, I'm just going to try this out. So I took it home, and I cleaned the whole thing, and then I sprayed it all down, and I stuck it in the window. And by the end of the season, I'm not going to say there was zero mold, but there was hardly any visible mold at the end of the season. And with me being allergic to yeast and mold, and it's right at my bedroom, right where my bed is. I felt better, I could breathe better, and I was really excited about it. So that's when, I reached out to Ryan, and I said, I would like some more of this product. And that kind of began our journey of, over the past year, how we conducted some, several experiments, in some live grow environments.
Yeah, awesome.
So
And
I was very impressed. I use it every year now. So every year I take them out, and I have had my AC going for 2.5 months now, and I'm still not seeing any mold in it. I also tried it also recently. My daughter uses a humidifier for some of her geckos, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try it in there. So before we actually filled it all with water and everything, I sprayed the whole inside of the component before we, filled it with water and ran it. And again, I've run many humidifiers before, and usually, in a couple of weeks, they start getting like slimy inside. And so and like I said, so I found that even every time I went to go take it and, add more water, I was like, where's the slime? Where's that red residue that you usually see? And again, it was not there. So I was very impressed with the product at that point.
nice, awesome. And as far as like, do you find some of your grow clients like seeking kind of advice from you as somebody who is um, frequently in their facility, trying to help them get their microbial issues, under control? Do you kind of look at like GrowDefender as at least an option to be able to refer to people when they do have issues?
Definitely. I mean, I can't tell you, I would say every cultivator has this issue.
Yeah,
Even ones that do everything that they possibly can, they're the cleanest places, still have issues with failing, their state regulatory, yeast and mold limits.
yeah, yeah. Something that's not going away for sure, and it's ultimately something that everybody suffers from. And the goal with a product like GrowDefender is just to try to reduce the failures and keep the facility cleaner, healthier, not just for the plants, but also, for the employees and workers, and making it a safer working environment. Dustin, anything else that you want to add?
No, I think you guys covered it, and I think it was just, I know Carly mentioned my audio. Hopefully, my audio is okay. If you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs
Sounds
up.
better now, yeah.
Okay. But no, just, Ryan and I were up treating facilities all throughout Rhode Island, and just hearing some of the workers saying, hey, I feel safer, whether it's the smell of alcohol. Like, we went in and we could smell alcohol from people spot cleaning, and just with eye irritation. Obviously, this is a product that does require, from a GrowDefender standpoint, some light PPE. But we say, after treating facilities, we noticed that we weren't getting sick as often. And Ryan, I think, has a house full of little kids that were sick, I think, for 5 or 6 weeks straight last winter. But just seeing it work for our own eyes, and hear people skeptical at first. And, we've been to 2 shows now that we've been talking to a lot of people and had a lot of warm welcome, and then just having them see it work for themselves, right? Don't trust what we're saying here, the data that we're providing on these slides. Like, we're working with people to do trials and get it in their facilities, and create some content so that they can see the benefit. Have, whether you're a cultivator, and you're on this webinar, and connecting us in a trial with your local lab, or if you're a lab and you're on this webinar, and some cultivators that have an issue, we're really just, building trust and having conversations, and like to keep the conversation going, because we've seen it work, like Tara's story, and from us now having this product, I can't tell you how many buddies of ours hit us up and say, man, I have mold in my shower all the time. And so it's got multiple applications. Obviously, we're here today to talk about cannabis, but seeing it work for people and creating healthier environments is a mission that we can get behind, and have been at this journey now for 4 years, and we're finally starting to get some traction. So we're just looking forward to partnering with people and going after this.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things you said there is, really the working with labs, and it's been a lot of fun, and just a blessing to work with Tara and her facility in Rhode Island. Working directly with cultivators who have problems, and are very open to trying a new product to try to get their microbial contamination under control. And our goal is to work with a grow and having their lab partner involved. So we're collecting the data and can present that, and just show the proof at the end, that their microbial contamination is lower and that the product is effective. And so that's all that we had today. Wanted to open it up for any questions that anyone might have.
While we're waiting for some questions, I'll make one more note. We talked about labs and cultivators, but also consultants, right? We know in the many conversations we've had over the last year, there's also very trusted consultants out there. And if you are a consultant and you're listening, and you already have your kind of go-to product line, we're just asking that you have an open mind, right? It was really tough for us entering the industry, going direct to cultivator, because some people that have issues, if they're reporting to boards, and they're, grams per square foot, and they have to report all this data, the last thing that they, some cultivators want to do is admit there's an issue. But looking at consultants that have the trust of some of these cultivators, again, we're not the full solution. We're a part of the solution. And I think that's just a good approach, whether you're a consultant, a cultivator, or a lab. We're all in this industry together, right? There's gas stations on every corner. There's multiple disinfectants. We can all work together to make a better industry. And with the consolidation that's happening in the industry right now, I think, the industry is going to get stronger. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
If I would just wanted to add to just a positive note of GrowDefender, one of the cultivators that we worked with, who had consistently failed microbial testing due to the high yeast and mold counts, just after one of the applications, all the product that came out of that room did end up passing for their state compliant testing. So it was a very positive effect on the overall, just from one application. So that was really cool to see.
And off of that, Tara, we have seen, as you continually use it, that it does residually get better, right? That covalent bond does get stronger. Obviously from an EPA regulations standpoint, we can only claim 90 days, but there is proof of it in building on efficacy as you continue to use.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Tara. I appreciate it. So I did not see any other questions come through, so I think we're going to end it here. Thank you, Tara, for joining us, taking time out of your day. Much appreciated. Yeah, absolutely. And appreciate everyone who joined, and thank you for attending. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.